Successful relationships.
Now I know that sometimes we'll be rough and that sometimes we will barely get along.
So I know this isn't my typical YouTube skit. I kind of wanted to do these in-depth videos. I just feel like it will be very helpful for people watching. I want to also use my platform to be able to, I feel like, give people a good guideline or give people what I feel is a great outline of what makes a successful relationship. And I'll be going through each of these sections. This video is going to be pretty long. This is for people who really want knowledge. I guess the knowledge will find the people who is seeking it. And I feel like putting something out that's not just a joke. Yeah, I can tell truth through humor, but I feel like actually sitting down and let's break down a successful relationship, because I feel like we live in a time where relationships are very surface level, whether it be a friendship or a romantic partnership. I feel like we think of it very surface level, and there's actually a guideline to follow. There's things that need to be worked on for a relationship to be successful. And it's a huge reason why we've been seeing less of that in our society lately. And I just kind of wanted to break down everything. And I wanted to start with some stuff. So, a relationship, and this is our introduction, is a connection between two people. So it doesn't have to just, be a romantic connection. It's just any connection whatsoever. And you can have a negative connection with somebody. If you have a negative connection with somebody, you don't like them, y'all have a relationship. But y'all relationship is just one that's filled by hate. Y'all relationship is something that's filled by resentment. You don't like somebody, they don't like you. That's a relationship. It's just an enemy, which is a type of relationship. So a relationship is a connection between two people, regardless of what that connection is. It's very important to understand and reflect on relationships, because you're better to understand how to move forward in the future. So if I have a situation that happens with my ex, right, or something that happened in my previous romantic relationship, going forward, I know how to move or what to look out for, so I don't run into those same red flags. So when you reflect and look back on the relationships that you were in previously, even if it is just something as small as a friendship, which I think is actually very important and not so small at all, then you know exactly how to move forward. I've had friendships that I don't have anymore, and I know you do as well. And because of those situations, we know how to better move forward. But not just understanding relationships of your own, but understanding relationships of the people around you. Understanding, the relationships that people may have with one another. And if there's positives to that, being able to take a little bit from their book, and take a little bit from their play style and kind of use it for yourself and add it to make it more positive impact for your relationship. What this is right now is very important to have, actually sitting down and doing an introspective deep dive on somebody else's relationship, maybe your relationship as well. It's very important, just because you're able to do an in-depth analysis of what makes a relationship work for somebody else and how it can work for you, and just the positives, because universally there are laws that a successful relationship has to follow, which I have outlined below. This next section we're going to get into is personal relationship history. So for 2A, it's going to include early influences and experiences, which include family dynamics and childhood friendships. And then for B, significant relationships and their impacts. Family dynamics is very important for relationships. I don't think we stress that enough. Your family are the first people that you interact with when you're born into the world. Who your family is usually says a lot about who you're gonna be growing up. Of course, this isn't always the case, but more oftentimes than not, how your family act is gonna influence you. If your family grows up believing one thing, you're probably gonna believe that thing. Is just nature versus nurture. It drives forward how we're gonna act towards people in the future, right? If you're somebody who didn't grow up with a strong father figure in their life, at all, and there was no male role model to show you what loving a woman actually looked like, you wouldn't know what that looked like. So you wouldn't be able to really do that unless you had taken the steps to actually learn how to do that, or taking those steps to teach yourself what you didn't get taught. But more often times than not, though, people don't do that. So, if you have a strong mother in the household, you know what to look for in a strong woman if you're a man, and you go that way, you're straight. Of course, I'm straight, so I'm going off of just the experiences of man and woman but this can be used universally. So just having a good family dynamic, and not everybody has the best family in the world, but even recognizing that, okay, maybe my family dynamic is not as good. Here is the bad parts of the family dynamic, and making sure you don't carry those dynamics with you and your relationships with other people. And so childhood friendships is going to come into play with that, because childhood friendships are the next people that you talk to besides your family. So you're going to be talking to your family a lot when you're growing up, but you're also going to be talking to your childhood friends. And this kind of molds what you're going to do or you're going to talk to in the future, right? If all your friends are gang members, then more than likely you're going to have this relationship with gang members. If you have this relationship with a very group of holy people who go to church all the time, but they aren't too overbearing, then more than likely you'll start going to church a lot and you won't be overbearing about it. It's just having friendships with people, the type of people that you surround yourself when you are growing up is very important. And children's minds are very malleable. They're very easily molded. So the things that we take from us from infancy, we're able to, pull back up in the future, and giving not only your children, but yourself positives of these, right? If you're still a child or you are like in middle school, surrounding yourself with better people will be better for your life. And we'll actually get into cutting off some of those toxic relationships further down on the outline. So then for 2B, we have significant relationships and their impacts, which include romantic relationships, friendships and social connections, and professional relationships. So we all know what a romantic relationship is. I don't really need to go far into it, but this is the person that you want to spend everything with. This is probably the most important relationship, unless you're religious like me, and then it's God. But this is the most important relationship, because it's the person that you're going to spend your life with. It's the person that you're going to reproduce with. It's the person that you're supposed to, go through thick and thin for. So having a good romantic partner is very, very, very important. And then you have your friendship and social connections. Like I said, goes the same as childhood friends, except you're a little bit older. These are just your friends in general as you go about life right now. And you might still be a child, but I'm just saying in general, having friendships and social connections. These are the people who you're connected with, but it's not like that unless they're your best friend. And then we have little subgenres in the friendship category. But your friendships, these are the people that you're connected with. These are the people you would do stuff for, that would do stuff for you. You hang out with them. And then we have our professional relationships. So these are strictly the relationships that we have in our jobs. These are the relationships that, we have at work. You have it with your boss. It's a professional relationship. These are the relationships that are going to help us get to that upper echelon, that place that maybe furthers our career. It's a career aspect relationship. So yeah, our professional relationships are just the work relationships that we have with people. And then the next chapter, we're going to get into self-perception in relationships, which include self-identity and self-worth, role within different relationships. So whether you're a leader, follower, or equal partner, and then patterns and recurring themes. So your self-identity and self-worth in a relationship is going to be very important, because how you perceive yourself is how you're going to act towards somebody else, right? So if you don't like yourself because you're the only person who 100% has your back, right? In your mind, okay, I really have my back. I'm not doing this for any other ulterior reasons. I actually love myself. I take care of myself. So because you have this confidence in yourself that you have your back 100% of the time, you move accordingly. But if you know that you only have your back and you still don't love yourself, you won't be able to love anybody else. And that's a little bit of common sense. But my mom used to say common sense ain't so common, because oftentimes we see people who have negative self-identity are people who constantly are asking for validation. I don't know if you guys have ever been in relationships where the person was constantly asking for compliments. Do I look good? Am I pretty? These are people with negative self-worth perceptions of themselves. And so having a positive self-identity and self-worth perception of yourself can lead to a positive relationship. And if you don't have these within yourself, it's probably not best to be pursuing one. And when I say that, or I mean in general, I don't mean just romantic relationships. I mean in general, You shouldn't be trying to build new connections when you don't care about yourself enough. It starts from within. So having a good self-identity, some good self-worth is very important overall in the relationship and its success. So then we have role within different relationships. So you can either be a leader or a follower in a relationship. Oftentimes we see those friendships where the friend does one thing and the other friend completely follows them blindlessly, and aimlessly. And then they both end up in a world of trouble because one decided to follow one knucklehead, and then they both became knuckleheads. So it's very important when we're in relationships to have equal footing. Okay, obviously when you're talking to your teacher, right, your teacher is going to be the leader and you're going to be the follower. You're to listen to your teacher. Obviously you and your teacher are not going to be on equal footing, right? But that's a professional relationship. When it comes to these close connections that you have with people, you don't want to be unequally yoked. You don't want to be unequally yoked with your partner. You don't want to be unequally yoked with your friends. You want to be on the same playing field. You want to be equal. There's no leader, there's no follower. You're constantly challenging things that are wrong. You're not just aimlessly following somebody. You're actually sitting there with a brain and thinking, and if what you're being led to do isn't a correct thing, being able to stand up and challenge that, or be able to not get involved in that, leads to success. And this could be something as small as arguments. Like whenever this person starts arguing with me, I argue back with them. You don't have to do that. So being on equal footing and realizing that you're supposed to have this equal footing in relationships, regardless of what type of relationship it is, except for the ones where obviously a leader is needed for the relationship, like one you would have with your pastor. Though if you have a good pastor, he would say, we're equal. I'm no better than you. We get into patterns and recurring themes. So we have attachment styles. Attachment styles is just the way somebody's attached, right? So if you have a secure attachment to somebody, you're secure in yourself, but you're still attached to them. You still like this person, you still like their company, you still like what they bring to the table, but you're secure in yourself. So you're not that clingy attachment, you're not insecure. I think when people say, oh, this person has an attachment issues, they mean that this person is insecurely attached, that this person has a negative attachment style, and that having a positive attachment style will lead to a successful relationship. So then we have different communication styles. So people might text, people might talk on the phone. I personally think if you can, a face-to-face conversation is always the best to have with people. But of course, we live in a digital age, so we're going to be texting a lot more. But having an effective communication style will negate a lot of the negatives that could come from maybe not communicating and having some conflict resolution methods, which could include, okay, if we're texting, and I know that when we text, it can get really heated, simply walking away from your phone can be an effective method to that, right? And if you're talking on the phone, okay, well, after we just got done with this, I'm gonna take a minute. That's perfectly fine, having these methods, or you go meditate, or you go do something, you go talk to God, whatever your conflict resolution method is, but just make sure it's a positive one. So then chapter 4, we're getting into emotional dynamics and emotions experienced in relationships. So these start off positive. We have love, joy, and satisfaction. Obviously, we know why this makes a successful relationship successful. Having love for a person is an amazing feeling. It's a joyous feeling. You get joy just from having love. So you get a whole nother emotion from having an emotion. And it allows you to cater to the person's needs. You sacrifice things for people that you love. You're just more in tune with yourself and with them. And y'all are more in tune with each other regardless of the type of relationship. And that's going to bring a lot of joy, which is needed for a relationship. If somebody's around you all the time and they just bring you nothing but sadness, or you feel like you can't really be yourself around them, then that is not a joyous relationship. That is a relationship of maybe fear, maybe of insecurity that needs to be worked on, which will lead to unsatisfaction if these things aren't followed, right? If you have love, if you have joy, you're going to be satisfied. But if you don't have these two things, you're not going to be satisfied in the relationship. And negative emotions can be breeding grounds for these not working out, right? So if you have fear, insecurity, and jealousy, it'll flip a successful relationship on its head simply because that fear alone will lead you to what you're fearful of. I don't know if you guys ever seen Star Wars, but in Star Wars, Anakin is on the light side. He's a Jedi Master. He's supposed to be the chosen one. And then he's afraid that Padme is going to die. Right? He has this vision that she's going to die in childbirth, and he doesn't want that. So he starts doing things to get to the position of him being able to save Padme's life, or what he thinks is that position. So he moves in such a way, and he moves fearfully to the point where he ends up joining the dark side and Palpatine and making that wrong move and going to the dark side and essentially losing the humane sense of himself because of that fear. It's the same thing with relationships when we're talking to people. I've been in relationships, I've been scared because I've been in a previous relationship and I got hurt in that previous relationship. So in my mind, I'm going, okay, but what if it doesn't work out? What if it's all for nothing? What if it's this? What if it's that? And then you start acting and treating the relationship as if it is that. You start doing things as if it is what you're fearful of. What if this person hurts me? What if this person does this to me? Or what if I do all of this and, you know, it turns out to be for nothing? And so then you start doing things and you start presenting yourself in a way that does lead exactly to that, because you're not opening up, you're not communicating, you're not doing these things because you're fearful that if you do these things, that it will lead to the downfall of the relationship, when doing them is what leads to the successes, and your fear of doing them leading to you not doing the positive things in a relationship just because you're scared if you do them, it won't work out, leads to it not working out. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy when you have this fear in a relationship. Insecurity as well. Fear is a giant breeding ground for insecurity, and vice versa. If you're insecure, you're going to be fearful. If you're fearful, you can be insecure. You know, they go hand in hand. That's why we have people who they're like, they're constantly, what you doing, where you at? Or they constantly think you're cheating. Those people who are in toxic relationships, oh, my girl thinks I'm cheating all the time, or oh, my man thinks I'm cheating all of the time. These are people who are insecure but are very fearful, maybe because they had a relationship where they got cheated on. So that insecurity of, and that fear of, what if I get cheated on again? And they start acting as if they have already gotten cheated on again. And they're treating an entirely new relationship and an entirely new person with entirely different thoughts, as if it was their ex who cheated, as if it was that person who hurt them, as if it was that person who stabbed them in the back 5 years ago. You know, so negating your negative emotions and instead turning these into positives, or simply thinking about the emotions that you feel, is very important. And then we have anger, resentment, and forgiveness. And then we get into recognizing and naming emotions. We get into being able to sit down and say, hey, I'm feeling sad. Here's why I'm feeling sad. Hey, I'm feeling angry. Here's why I'm feeling angry. What can I do to not feel this emotion anymore? If the feeling is a feeling of one of happiness, you can say, hey, I'm happy. What can I do to keep feeling this feeling of happiness? What can I do to continue having these emotions positively? And if the emotions are negative, being able to sit there and be like, hey, I'm really depressed. Hey, I'm really upset. Why? And being able to recognize your emotions and cope in a positive way is very important. And I don't think we do that enough. I don't think that people sit and actually name their emotions. People, oftentimes when they're angry, you'll just hear people yell at each other. They'll go back and forth with one another. They don't really care. They'll just go back and forth. They're not really trying to understand. You know, it's more of a debate. You know, instead of sitting there and going, hey, why am I responding the way I'm responding? Oh, I'm angry. All right, well, what can I do to negate the anger that I feel? And then moving accordingly, instead of just going based off of your emotions, actually being able to recognize and name them will take you a larger step. It'll take you a larger step forward. And your coping mechanisms and your strategies for coping with the emotions that you feel have to be positive, right? Some people, when they're coping, they go pick up the bottle. Or when they're coping, they go pop a perk, you know? And having positive coping mechanisms, like going and meditating, like I'm gonna go run, or I'm gonna go do positive things. I'm gonna go plant. I'm gonna go in my garden and do stuff, or I'm gonna, having positive things that are gonna build your character, or things that are gonna continue to build you as a solid individual, and being able to cope that way by doing something that's going to add structure to your life instead of something that's going to tear you down in the long run. Because when you start feeling these emotions and you're using a negative coping mechanism, especially one that's addictive, whenever you feel this emotion, you're gonna be like, all right, not having the best day, about to go pick up a bottle of Hennessy and we going crazy tonight. You don't want to do that. And then the last bit of this section is just empathy and understanding others' emotions, being able to recognize that, hey, this person's sad. Why are they sad? Right? And if you don't know, being able to talk to them and communicate and being able to get that out without asking them what's wrong. Or if you do just ask them what's wrong, being able to respond in such a way where they don't feel like they're burdening themselves by talking to you. And being able to move accordingly. What will I say that will invoke an emotion out of this? What emotion will this person feel if I say the words that I just said to them? And this is any relationship at all. Being able to understand that, okay, wait, I just said this and this person isn't feeling good about it. Why? What about what I said invoked a negative emotion in this person? And oftentimes we don't do that. Oftentimes, somebody feels an emotion, they go, well, it wasn't my intention to do that. It wasn't my, if I made you feel any type of way. But and that's fine, right? But we often don't actually sit and think about what I just said and think about, oh, maybe if I actually break down what I just said to this person and why it hurt them, I can get to the root and maybe change some of the stuff I'm saying, and I'm not saying that you're always in the wrong if a person feels some type of way. Some people are very defensive, but being able to understand why people act the way that they act, or their responses, especially if they're toxic, you're able to cut off a toxic person's trigger points. If a person is toxic, you cut off those feeding points so that they may no longer be toxic. And I think Cat Williams said it best: a toxic person will flee from you. They'll run from you because they understand that you have this positivity, and toxicness likes toxic. It doesn't like positivity. So it'll flee from you. But being able to understand somebody's emotions and what's making them that way, especially if it's a negative emotion, can help you be able to move accordingly, how you're supposed to be moving, to make sure that those emotions aren't invoked out of that person. So for chapter 5, we're going to get into communication in relationships, which include effective communication skills, which falls under active listening, nonverbal communication, and clear and honest expression of thoughts and feelings, which all are kind of go into the same type of thing, right? My mom used to say that you have one mouth and two ears, so you can talk half as much as you speak. So you can talk half as much as you listen, and so that you can listen twice as much as you speak. Excuse me. So my mom used to tell me this all the time, and as a kid, I never really understood. But people want to be heard, right? People want a voice. They want a voice that's heard. And oftentimes we don't feel like we have a voice. We don't feel like we're able to speak about the things that we go through, or we're able to really go into depth. We kind of keep some of the stuff in. A lot of the nuances, the little small stuff, we don't really talk about. That it eventually adds up over time. But being able to listen to somebody and being able to listen to how they think and being able to listen to their concerns, their worries, their fears, and being able to have a healthy communication, a healthy response, and being able to have healthy dialogue and listen to the healthy dialogue and receive the healthy dialogue and actively listen is very important. Being able to pick up on nonverbal cues, or see, okay, this is how somebody acts when they're nonverbal communication, and being able to understand somebody's body language. I'd say so much as just looking at what body language means. You don't have to be a psychologist in order to understand body language, and being able to know what certain things mean and look at stuff, and you're able to tell how somebody is feeling more just based off of how they move their body, and maybe if I'm talking to you and we're getting deep into a conversation and it's kind of getting a certain way, and you see me cross off my arms, maybe I'm not receptive to it. Maybe I'm closing myself off from the conversation. Maybe there's a reason for that. And picking up on these cues and being able to adjust the conversation accordingly or adjust in a certain way to make things a better experience for both parties is very important. Of course, clear and honest expression of thoughts and feelings is going to be a given. So then we have the barriers to communication, which is misunderstandings and assumptions, fear of vulnerability, and cultural and personal differences. Like I said, pretty self-explanatory, but if you make an assumption about somebody or you misunderstand somebody, you're not gonna really wanna communicate because you think that you already know. So misunderstandings are a huge part of why relationships fail. Oftentimes, if you've ever seen a Disney movie, which I'm sure you have, there's always that relationship where like the girl walks in and the guy isn't cheating on her, he's not, but it looks like he is. And she goes and turns around and walks away and he's like, wait, it's not what it looks like. Trudy, it's not what it looks like, wait. And she just keeps walking and he never actually explains what it was. Like, oh, it's not what it looks like, but let me never explain what that was. And Trudy, in her mind, she's like, oh yeah, he was cheating. She automatically makes an assumption in her head and misunderstands. So there is no communication to be had from Trudy to Brad, right? She doesn't want to talk to Brad because Brad cheated on her in her mind, but she doesn't know that that's not true because she didn't sit down and have a conversation with him. She automatically assumed. And it's the same vice versa. It's not a gender thing. It's a human thing. And us having misunderstandings and assumptions about one another or how one another moves leads to us not taking the proper steps to properly communicate because we automatically think that we understand, we know what's going on with the person, or we understand how a person is trying to move or what they're thinking, when actually sitting down and having healthy dialogue prevents you from getting the wrong assumption, because then you're going to start moving in a way that may not be the best way to move because you automatically came to an assumption in your mind and you already came to this misunderstanding that wasn't true. And then we have the fear of vulnerability. So some people don't want to be vulnerable. Like myself, this is something that I've struggled with for a while, you know, actually opening up to people and going in depth and talking about some of the stuff that I've dealt with because I didn't want to put myself out there, or I don't want to be a burden, or I don't want to feel like a Debbie Downer. So your fear of being vulnerable will lead you to not say anything simply because you're fearful of the response that you're going to get back. Am I being too weak? Am I saying too much? Am I speaking Japanese? You know, what's the deal here? And really just breaking it down and getting to the root of it is important, but that fear of vulnerability is going to prevent you from communicating simply because of that fear. And that drives us back up to the previous chapter where we covered fear, because that fear of vulnerability, that in general fear is just a barrier for communication. And then, you know, cultural and personal differences is pretty self-explanatory. I don't have to really get in depth into that one. So then we get into chapter 6 and we're starting to near the end, so bear with me. We have core values and their influences on relationships, which touch on multiple core values. So trust, honesty, loyalty, mutual respect, equality, which we all know is very important. Having any of these is grounds for a successful relationship, but having any of these negatively, like you don't have trust, you don't have having one of these things, not having one of these things is grounds for a terrible relationship, right? So you can have trust, you can trust your partner, right? You have trust, but you don't have honesty, so you're lying to each other, right? You trust them, but you're lying to each other. You know, so having these things positively, these core values in a positive aspect, not having these core values leads to the detriment of a relationship, because you don't have these core values that are the cornerstone and the building blocks for a successful relationship. Having a person in your life who you can align those views with, which is the second section of this chapter, alignment of values with others, having a aligning view with people is very important. You want somebody who also aligns with the core value of trust and honesty and loyalty. You want to surround your people with those, and not the people who, oh, they'll talk about somebody behind their back when they're not there. You know that they're not loyal. You know, like somebody who does certain stuff. Oh, she's cheating on her boyfriend behind his back. You know about it, but she seems like a good individual overall, but she's not showing loyalty to her boyfriend. How can you expect her to show loyalty to you as her friend? You know, in the relationship is supposed to be the highest point. So if she can do it to him, she can stab her boyfriend in the back. Or what's stopping her from stabbing you in the back? Or what's stopping, if he is cheating on his girlfriend, what's stopping him from stabbing you in the back? So having somebody who has these positive core values is very important to having a successful relationship, and being able to say, hey, this doesn't really align with the value of trust or honesty, and being able to have a conversation when maybe those views aren't being met, or those values aren't being touched, or they're being skimmed through, or they're being handled half-heartedly or not handled at all. Then we get into chapter 7, which is probably the most important. 7 and 8 are the most important, and this is growth and change in relationships. So for 7A, we have personal growth and its impact on relationships, which includes self-improvement and self-awareness, and then changing needs and expectations. It's a daily walk when you're growing in a relationship. It's a daily thing. I think people oftentimes, they get in their mind, oh, especially in a romantic relationship, oh, I love this person loved me, we together, it's us against the world. And then they think that every day is supposed to follow, hi, hey, love you too, blah, blah, blah. And then when stuff goes bad, they run to the internet and they run to Twitter, and they're, how should I move in this situation? What should I do here? But actually being able to grow yourself, being able to have self-awareness, being able to look back. I can look back at my text messages of my fights with my ex and read through it and be like, wow, we were really dumb. Like, oh, wow, this was nothing to fight about. If somebody would have said something different here, the relationship would have changed course. Or if we would have said something different here, the conversation would have shifted in a way that it never got to this point. You know, and you're able to identify those things, and you're able to move accordingly. And so having self-improvement, being able to grow with this person every single day, it's a daily thing. This person isn't going to get it right every single day, whether it be a friendship or a relationship. People are going to hurt you. But being able to grow and being able to become better, if you do mess up, never make the mistake again, and continue to grow as an individual, and continue to be the best person that you can possibly be, and be self-aware. Know that you're not perfect. Know that you continue to mess up, and being able to say, hey, I'm not perfect, but I can for damn sure try to be as perfect as I can. And you just move accordingly. You're not going to get it right all the time, you know, but you're trying to. It's the fact that you're trying to grow, and being able to look back on your past self and say, wow, I was really stupid last year. Even if you're not a stupid person, just being able to acknowledge that you're continuing to grow, instead of thinking that you know it all right now, because you don't. I don't even, and I need to continue to improve and be flexible. Then you have you changing your needs and expectations, which is going to happen in any friendship, in any relationship. You go in there with a core set of beliefs. You believe a certain thing, and there are going to be people in your life who are going to challenge you on these things. And it doesn't have to be a debate. Just them being around is going to challenge your perception of, maybe you think a certain way, or maybe you think certain people are a certain way until you're around certain people. You're like, my expectations and my perception of what I believed was going to be reality was challenged. And being able to adapt and being able to be flexible is important. Ending relationships and moving on, which are going to be our negative relationships. So obviously in a negative relationship, you're going to want to remove them from your life, because people oftentimes, they hang on to relationships, and it doesn't have to be hanging on to the person. It can be hanging on to the emotional baggage that the relationship brought with them. Like, oh, this person made me feel fear because this person cheated on me. Like I said earlier, that insecurity or that fear of being cheated on will lead somebody to act accordingly. Like, oh, this person could cheat on me, so they start acting like that person already cheated on them, or start treating that person like they already cheated on them, and start treating them in this negative way, simply because they haven't ended the relationship that they had with that person who did cheat on them. Ending the relationship means ending that relationship with that feeling of fear or that feeling of anger, you know, being able to actually finally just move on and say, hey, we didn't get it right. We were just people, you know, and just being able to disconnect yourself and move on is very important. So you're not carrying around that emotional weight, and it's not easy. And we'll get into some resolutions and how to be able to do that. It's easier said than done. So then that's when we're going to get into our last chapter, which is relationship challenges, which are common challenges faced. Trust issues and betrayal, and being able to balance individuality and togetherness. Like I said before, trust issues and not having that core value is important. Oftentimes we feel betrayal in relationships, whether it be something as big as cheating or something super small, whatever that may be for you. We're gonna be betrayed. We're gonna feel hurt. It's just humanity. It's human nature. We're not perfect. We don't get everything right. We hurt each other, especially the ones who love us the most. And being able to have a solid communication foundation is very important. And also being able to balance individuality and togetherness. Sometimes we're only around people all the time. We rarely get time for ourselves. Maybe that's you. Maybe you never get time to actually sit down and think, and being able to disconnect yourself from a large gathering of people, or being able to, all right, let me go on a trail today. Let me go walk. Let me go think. Being able to be by yourself and be comfortable in your own skin, and being able to do things alone, have this individuality and not needing people around you. Oftentimes we see people constantly around their friends, which is not bad, but they're around their friends so much where their friends can't breathe, or because they just constantly want to be around somebody because they don't want to be alone. And being able to be okay with being alone, but also want togetherness is great. And being able to have a healthy balance of the two is very important. So we have some strategies for overcoming challenges. The first one being counseling and therapy. That's something I've done in my life. It's something I did when I was younger. It's something my parents believe in. Thankfully, I was able to have parents who actually believe in therapy, though I made a skit talking about Black parents don't believe in therapy. It's actually not true. Like, my parents believe in therapy. And therapy is very important because you're going to talk to somebody with an unbiased perspective. These are people who, they have your best interest at heart, but they're also completely unbiased. So they're going to tell you the whole truth. They're going to tell you exactly what you need to hear 100% of the time, regardless of if you want to hear it or not. So having counseling and therapy, and I know some people don't believe in that, but you have to be open and you have to be honest and actually sit there and tell the person across from you what's actually going wrong or what's actually happening so that they can help you. Oftentimes in therapy, people don't want to open up to even get to that point where they could be helped. So going to counseling and therapy is very important. And just regular going by yourself, maybe you go with a partner, maybe you go so that the relationship moves smoothly. Some conflict resolution techniques, like I said, I like to personally go meditate. Maybe I go on a walk, maybe I go on a trail, maybe I go sit by the lake. Regardless, I want to disconnect my mind from the emotion that I'm feeling. If I recognize that I am feeling an emotion of anger, I can go do something that calms my mind. So listening to some jazz music might do that. Oftentimes, we feel a negative emotion, and so then we run straight to that negative emotion. You just got your heart broken by a girl, so then you turn on All Girls Are the Same by Juice WRLD. Like, you start responding to your emotion with more of your emotion that you're feeling, instead of the counter point to that, the counter attack to that, which is, if you're feeling anger, happiness or joy will counteract that, or a feeling of relaxation. So you would listen to jazz music, or you would go meditate to fight these conflicts that you're facing within yourself. And then also having a good support system around you, having those people with those core values. You're able to talk to these people who do believe in the same things that you believe in. So when you are going through the things that you're going through, you're not going through them alone. Oftentimes, we just see people, they'll go through something, they'll shut down, they'll remove themselves from everybody and anybody, and they don't want to talk to anybody and everybody, which is fine, of course. You're going to be able to handle things by yourself, but people will do that every single time, to the point where it's like, okay, if this person's sad, they just lock themselves away, when really you need more people who are going to think in a positive way and have these core values and these core relationships, because the only person that you're hurting is yourself, and you're hurting your relationships with others, because then others will feel like you don't trust them enough, or you don't think that they're worthy to share the information with that you may be feeling, because they could possibly be helping you, and they just want to help you and love you, and building that strong support system around you, and being able to be resilient through some of the small stuff and even through the large things. Being able to be resilient, but also having a resilient support group is very important to overcoming the challenges of trust issues and betrayal and feeling these negative emotions. Oftentimes we just don't do that, we just run away, which I have done. But you have to sit there and think, like I said, recognize your emotions and being able to move forward. So your resolution might be different. How you go about resolving how you feel or a conflict might be different. There might be something on this list that I didn't add that might be a different, maybe your thing is, oh, you play sports, right? Like I like to box, so maybe I go to the boxing gym and box because I'm feeling this feeling of whatever negative emotion I'm feeling, So it's very important. And that brings us to our conclusion, which is just going through what we covered today, which is personal relationship history, perception in relationships, emotional dynamics, communication in relationships, values and beliefs, growth and change in relationships, relationship challenges, and that pretty much covers it. Having dialogue like this and being able to sit down and talk to you and being able to sit down and really break it down is very important, because I think we live in a world where we don't do that now. We live in a time where that's not really done. That's something that we leave to the internet, or stuff that, we go off what the internet says, and the internet says not to do this or to do that, instead of really sitting down yourself and breaking it down so that you can have a successful relationship, instead of going off of what some random Twitter user on the internet said makes a positive relationship, and trying to argue their point with you. Because oftentimes if you look on Twitter, they're not following a lot of the stuff on here. There's a lot of arguing and discourse just on social media in general. And being able to take that time for yourself and have an introspective thought process on relationships can help your relationships improve successfully. And that's what this video is for, so that you can watch this as many times as you need to really break it down. I want you to be as mindful as possible and be able to move your best foot forward the best way that you could possibly do it. I think having self-reflection is very important, and maintaining healthy relationships that, follow most of these things, if not all, and we're not going to be able to get all sometimes, but most of these things on this list, then everything will run smoothly and you'll have the successful relationship that you're looking for. But it's all about self-reflection, and being able to have that moment to be honest with yourself about where you are, and being able to have a real dialogue with somebody else, or maybe be able to look at somebody else's relationship and have a real self-reflection, not bias, and just sit there and try to move your best foot forward and move in the best way possible. So I just wanted to come on here and kind of just go in depth analysis about successful relationships and kind of just break it down a little. So like I said, I know this isn't my usual video, but I want to do more things like this. I think this is very educational. I have a platform, and I feel like I could be using it in a way better way than I've been using it. So I just think, okay, skits are cool, but what way can I really go in depth and help people? In this video, I don't expect this video to be jumping out the moon. I expect the people to watch it to be the people who are truly seeking knowledge. And that knowledge will come because I'm providing it. And I am more than willing to sit down and do outlines like this about any other topics that you guys may have. So if you have any topics at all you want me to do an introspective, deep dive analysis on and really have an in-depth conversation on and break it down for you, I'm willing to do that. And, I have another skit coming soon. That's not over, but I want to do more videos like this to maybe educate you guys a little bit more and maybe bring something to your mind that you weren't thinking about before in relationships, or something else that I touch on. So yeah, that all about do it. And I will see y'all in the next one.